All right, welcome to your restorative session. We're going to do a restorative warm-up today, kind of warming up for the chest circulation and also the front line of the body. We're going to kind of emphasize this whole front space, hip flexors, after the first few minutes. So to get that kind of in a peak warmth, and what I want you to have is all these props kind of set like this. So they're going to be a setting kind of stage for you. You've got a rolled up blanket next to the wall. You know, it's a little bit away from the wall. I measured about a full block in the highest setting, again, away from the wall at least, and I'm short. So you probably want to put that tightly rolled up blanket away from the wall. A bolster should be about middle of your mat. It's probably going to be good for any height, I think, on this one. And then a blanket at the back, which is just in a single fold. You won't need it any higher. Okay, a couple blocks on the side yard, a ball, and a bright orange one, and a belt that's buckled up in a loop nearby. Okay, this is all your ingredients for your art project today. And then you'll have your sandbag. Okay, so let's start. We're going to face to the wall, and I want you to have the feet on the sides of the bolster and have the movement of the legs so that their feet, you're kind of stacking the joints. Okay, you'll see my head eventually here, but you're stacking the joints so that of course, my hips over my ankles, but we're going to move our hips back so they're reaching away from the feet. And then, of course, you want to be close enough to the wall so that your hands touch it. Okay, so feel the pressure of the palms and then enter the experience of the reaching of the chest. Maybe wag your tail, but get a feeling of movement of the hips. And as the hips can truly move, we're starting to get a little bit of warm up into our chest and our spine. So simply come into this wall dog pose and feeling that energy reaching, and it starts to thread. What I want you to notice is it threads across the armpit chest into the upper seam. I think of like into the inside line from the scapula towards the spine. You might feel, okay, there's a little bit of pressure with my hands pushing the wall. Okay, now when you move your brain towards the wall, move your head towards the wall, bring the hands over to the right side. I want you to step the left foot back so the top of the foot, this is why I want your bolster back enough. The top of that left foot is on the bolster, and your right heel reaches down. It doesn't really change except that you're moving your hips towards the wall. Your arms are straight. So if you can't see my arms, I'm just straightening out my arms, palms pushing, and see if you can feel a light amount of length in the front of the left thigh, up at the thigh lid, right through the rim of the hip flexor, or you could say, kind of psoas reacher. Psoas reacher, that's what it is. Okay, now feel the plain position of the hands just pushing. So you could do little push-ups if you feel activated, but feel the hands spread out, the fingers. Okay. Take some care here to do a little bend of your left knee, bend the right knee, and just let the spine move into a little bit of a cat spine. So I just curl so my back flexes, my head lowers between the arms. It's a little challenging to figure this one out. But as you come up, I want you to move your brain towards the wall, push into your hands, lift your head towards the ceiling, stretch your chin up, stretch through that left leg, front of the leg, and then come back. Step the left foot to the side of the bolster on the ground. Reach the right foot back on top of the bolster. So keep in mind my right top foot, like I'm pointing my toes, like really pointy. And if you're kind of on the edge of a wall surface, just do the best you can. The emphasis is the leg part that you're stretching. So keep with it. But what I want you to do is that you're feeling the front of that right thigh reaching, that you've got the bolster to push into with the top of the foot. Yeah, you might have to lift your chest. You might decide that you want to move your arms a little farther up, the hands farther up the wall. That feels way better for me. Breathing. We'll get to that. But for now, we're doing a little bit of a warm up into these thigh parts. Okay, now bend the left knee a little bit, bend the right knee, do a little bit of that cat spine. You can slide the hands down or up. Okay, I'm just trying to feel the spine warm itself up. And then last but not least, you're going to lift up your brain, step the feet out wide, take a wide stance and let the hands lower down, just lower than the shoulders, and reach the chest up towards the ceiling like you're pretending to do, right? Almost a push-up plank pose right into the wall. Breathe. You're not close to the wall. Your feet are farther back. Okay, and then come back to that dog pose, last one. Look down to the blanket, the bolster. Okay, and that whole front body that we got a little bit of warmth into, we're going to truly accentuate that sensation, okay? So take one more moment where you're keeping the armpit chest stretching, or you could call it stressing. Breathe. Okay, now walk the feet towards the wall. Be careful, don't bonk your head. And then you're going to help yourself down and take a seat on the bolster. Now this could be a little challenging. So take your chances here. Use your hips to push down to sit. If you need, like probably almost a chair to get down, could be. But I want you to have that blanket so it's under your calves. So I'm going to stretch the legs to the wall, the feet, okay? And first things first, I slide forward on the bolster. I don't know if this is exactly the spacing I'm going to want, but I'm going to actually kind of curl the blanket so that with my knees pointing up, perfect bend of the feet, balls of the feet at the wall so I can feel the heel lower down, the arch of the foot. And then I just roll the blanket that's already rolled up, and I'm going to push it and nudge it under my calf, kind of closer to the Achilles here, push it downwards. And then once I lower back, I'm going to push my feet to lengthen the legs and move back onto the blanket. And I almost got it right. Okay. I'm going to take a few moments to perfect it. So I do want to feel my feet, the balls of the feet touching the wall. Not necessarily the heel. Some of us have done this with the heel pressure, but I want you to get this like really nice extension and openness in the front body. So if I have the heels pushing down, it's also going to press the backs of my knees and hyperextend. So it will likely feel a little weird with the heels up. If you don't like that, you can go back to what we've done before with the heels on the ground and the blanket a little closer up under, just below the knees. You can try that. Now the bolster's pretty high up. Now, what I was talking to with some people that joined early on was that this supported back bend, some of us, well, most of us are taught over and over to push the shoulders towards the spine. But in this version, we're going to follow the latest textbook of this with Judith Lasater. But it's the procedure of this is to open the arms out. So take your sand, if you have any, right? You're going to put it across the tops of the thighs. If you feel like, gee, I don't know if I'm on this right, I'd rather have you be higher on the bolster, because this is a challenging one, than farther down on the back. So if you feel like just the occiput, like the center of the back of your brain is just barely touching down, and you feel like you're almost towards the top of the back of your head, I want you to maybe get your fingers at the occiput, at the shelf at the back of your head, and just try to get that to stretch back. So what ends up working is your respiratory muscles this way. If you're really not happy with this, you can always come back to kind of what we've done before, the heels on the wall, right? Slide a little farther back, that's fine. Okay, but I feel a little bit of suspension. I feel some circulation in my face beginning. It's definitely interesting. And then as your arms spread out, different, right? You want the arms to reach out to the mat, outwards off the mat, and motion So that as you let your eyes close, if you want to put an eye pillow on, this might be a good one to have. If you have to go take a field trip to get one, maybe pass. But your eyelids are good little eye pillows as well. You can blink a lot, you can close your eyes, do things that are good for us to nurture the circulation of the respiratory muscles. Right? So we want to find a nourishing pathway in the front line of the body. And you might just kind of spark a new idea here with this way of coming into supported bridge. I mean, it's a little different, but feels a little more comfortable in my back, to be honest. So if it's tight on your back, really feel that the inhale is working into kind of building up the momentum in the heart, but the exhale almost always relaxes our heart. So from exhalation, the heart relaxes. It lowers down its momentum. So try to lengthen your exhales. Just breathing through the nose. Exhale how it's comfortable. And then just scan where in your body you feel the most kind of weight onto any surface, the bolster, the floor. Yeah, if the feet are kind of scooting a little bit at the wall, that's good. It's like your body is alive. So it's going to have its own kind of creature comfort. How can I get back to, balance? So I feel like I can just be without any discomfort. So if your feet start to turn out, notice that. I try to complement that by reaching through my feet, whether they touch the wall or they just kind of intermittently release, and then just move the feet back to touching, making that little imprint, my little toe prints. And now that we have that mid-body opening, elongating and stretching, we're going to start to move into a inner vine of the leg circulation. So feel how the sand across the upper thigh brings the weight. Okay, and I want you to continue that path of circulation. That's all we do anyway in this, right? We're optimizing our circulation to stimulate the function of things. That's a bit of the work. So you can either keep your sand on. I like to slide it a little bit higher up to the front of my hip bones. Maybe it feels like lower belly, so it doesn't slide off, if in case it does. And then I want you to bring the feet in towards the bolster, walk them in. And first thing, just feel the feet parallel. And then feel the weight that sinks to your upper back so that the neck might stretch a little bit more on this one, meaning I slide slightly back. So now the back of my skull is completely on the blanket. It's centered and pressing. And then I'll bring the soles of the feet together and the knees, well, they go with gravity, right? They're going to flow out. So the inner thigh has that opportunity to go with gravity to help the circulation in the lymph, not trying to force the knees to the floor. So that might be different from your expectation. So I sometimes will guide the sandbag back down because it gives some nuance of kind of creeps the flow into the leg parts, but it's the leg pits. So if you decide, I don't want sand there, you could put it up towards the ribs. This is a pretty easy area for balancing the sand below the base of the sternum, right? So it's at the xiphoid process. It's at the whole very base where the ribs intersect. Or you can have the sand lower, you choose. But let's just let the arms go out to goalposts, stretch out the elbows, the hands back from the elbows, and let the head maybe nod a little side to side. Now that it's farther back on your mat, still on a blanket. And then capture that feel of in-breath and out breath. And if you have the sand high up, you can feel the movement of the breathing muscles. You kind of climb into that inhale. It's interesting. Strengthening. And then on the exhale, empty the lungs. You decide if you're even going to have sand here. It might be nice not to as well, because you can feel the diaphragmatic motion down to the belly. But since the ribs are so shielded and they're kind of like a barricade, okay, for the delicacy inside, it's going to feel like the shield just kind of lifts and lowers. Okay, so let's take a few moments here when we transition our support under us. So if you have sand on your thigh lids area lower, I want you to slide it away. If you still have it on the upper body, you can keep it. You might like the strength work. But as you guide the knees towards, parallel feet, knees across from each other as they live their life, really work on pushing down into the feet. Now, the idea of my connection to my feet is oftentimes heel connection. So I'm just going to try to let the feet rest themselves down and start to slide my weight a little bit back off the bolster. The sand's going to go because it just feels like too much. Okay. And I want you to lower your arms down, and you're going to walk the feet back. Caution on the knees, because it does push them a little forward over the ankles. And I want you to let the hips lift and push the bolster under you. Push it towards the side so it goes horizontal. This is the biggest event today to get organized, is the bolster goes across the mat. And instead of trying to push the bolster up too fast, I want you to guide your feet to plant down through the whole foot, and see if you can lift up the hips, move the tailbone, if it'll go at all. See if you can tuck the tailbone under or slide the body on the bolster so that the rear, you can feel it is on the other edge of the bolster. It's not on the floor, but you definitely have your bolster all the way under your pelvis, and you'll feel the rule of the rib, right? There is a bit of a rib expansion just having the bolster under your pelvis. Yeah, this is a good one just to kind of feel now, if you had your arms spread out a bit, to feel the chest opening, which creates that movement of the shoulders back and kind of down, huh? I like that. Okay, you decide, blanket flat or blanket higher, lift the feet up, and let's take a little bit of a leg reach. Both of them as they move up, and they move up so that they're in tandem to kind of be interesting for the pelvi, right? So the pelvis, right, I like to go a little side to side until I feel, okay, this is what pelvic enlightenment feels like, right? I have it lifted, there's no prolapse going on, and pelvic floor, bladder, it's so good. So I want this nourishing pathway for the legs. If you're really jittery with it, remember, you don't have to have your legs straight up. If you find you need to bend the knees, bend them, hold them, do what feels comfortable for you. Now I'm going to move my blanket just a little higher under my head and just see what that's like. So fold it, one more fold. If it feels like you want to go back down to the one fold, that's fine. And I'm going to reach the blanket edge so it's right at the base of almost the base of my neck. It's a little bit higher than that. But you definitely have the brain stem on the blanket, but it's nowhere it's not under my shoulders. Okay. Take a belt, and I want you to have your belt so it is in a loop. It's all connected. And with that loop, you're going to reach the thighs towards your torso, if you're going into a plow pose, and bend the knees just the right amount, not too much, not too little, so that you can impact the circulation into the digestive tract, right? You get a little bit of supply of circulation pressing, leg supply.
not air supply, leg supply. Okay, take a belt, scoop up the feet, and I like to have the buckle in a place I can easily maneuver if I need to loosen it or tighten it up. But start with that push up with vertical legs. You might feel like your rear is pretty much just in this exposed pattern. It should feel pretty vulnerable. In the back line of the body, that's ideal. And then as I move my feet out, the traction goes in side of leg, back of leg, inner leg. Not a lot in the front leg, but you can feel when you push out into the belt, you decide it's truly, how far out you're going to go. If it feels too far out, you can always pull on the belt, cinch it up a bit. Okay, so maybe hands touch onto the kneecap so that you can just explore that there's a little tiny bit of a bend, but it should be so micro. And some of us will be really comfortable without that. So feel if the feet flex, try to keep them from turning out or turning in. And then as the spine has that ascended lift at the base of it, which is so good for our spine. You might just let your hands reach back, hold the elbows. Yeah, so an elbow crisscross can feel a little challenging, but good. And then you can really seize that circulation in the ribs, right? Now, if my blanket's too bulky, this is not a good thing, right? So a flat blanket might feel better with the hands reaching the elbows, to be honest. But I'll go for it. Even if I was to hold my arms a little higher up, this looks kind of awkward, but still I'm working with movement on the breath. This is a challenging one to breathe in through the nose, though. It's almost like I quickly try to use the mouth for breathing on this one. So try to keep that in breath through the nose. Ribs expand. Change the crossing of the arms. If you're using that method, if you're not, you can have the arms straight back. You can interlace your fingers at the roots and turn the hands inside out. Or you can have the hands resting. This feels great. Okay, let the circulation occur. If the knees are starting to twitch inwards, you got to be a little careful, because if time goes by, these interesting little habits will start to evolve. Without your brain interpreting them, it just starts to happen. The muscles find their own habits. They sneak around you. So feel what would be a nice regulating reach with the legs. So I want you to have the feet flexing, so a little more action in the soles of the feet. Okay. Now, it's true you have to push a little bit to attain this, otherwise the whole thing crumbles. But as we move into the feet closer, you're going to bend the legs. If you've got to bend the knees, I would rather have them move a little bit outwards than inwards. And you're going to reach up with a hand, so release any crossing or interlacing with your hands. And you're going to hold onto the belt that's closest to you. Even if it's one belt, there's two sides to it in this moment. And you're going to pull and see if you can go straight down towards the belly. It's not that high up, so the shoulders don't have to respond that much. But feel the back of the leg straighten and then pull, and now you're kind of right onto the abdominals. And then reach the hands up higher on the belt, slide. There's no hurry. Your feet to each other, and feel the back of the pelvis on the left side. And I want you to bend the left knee, and then as the left foot comes down, the bottom of the foot is on the mat, not the heel, the heel is part of the foot, but you're not straightening the leg yet. So place the bottom of that foot down, okay? And then I want you to take your sand and add it over to the top of the left thigh. And of course, the left thigh is going to probably respond by stretching down. So you got a blanket below. I like that quite a bit for this one, but if you don't like it, you can kick it away. But take your belt, tighten it up so you can cinch up the belt just a bit at a time. And then see if you can reach it. Now, don't make it too small of a loop. Reach it to the back of your head. And as the leg reaches, caution, right? Not too much yanking on the back of the knee. What's the purpose here? So, right, I'm focusing on that inversion, so the energetic of reversing the flow back to the heart. But this isn't just, invertive energetics, right? Made up word invertive. But I find that this is clearly it's some muscular balancing, right? So I want to feel as if I push into the belt with just a foot, but it is more than a foot. It's a whole leg that you're feeling. So use the sand on the opposite thigh. If you don't have sand, of course you can bend the knee even more. So that might be better for some. And feel that you're kind of kicking up, even though it's not like it is like you kick all the way to the attachment at the top of that right thigh. Yeah. You can even reach back there with the hand and kind of just jostle the back of the leg, right? The hamstring. Feel where it's kind of stuck, where there's some buildup. It's kind of an interesting cross fiber reach. And then let your head relax back. What I sometimes like to do, I rarely do it, but I like to get the ball to the back of the leg or the side and just, it's a really light kind of massage pattern. It's so light, but it's interesting to kind of rush the circulation in the leg. Sensory. It's also good for my hand. Right? That might be nice. Just caution it. I don't want to push my knee this way. No knee that way. Okay, you can try that for a few moments or just pass on the silly idea. Or maybe you can toss the ball and it'll land on your foot and hold. Arms are open. Spine is a developing story here. A lot of energy in a right leg. Okay. If it's too tight, remember you decide if the belt loosens up. You definitely can loosen it. You can always come out of the pose. Belly moves with the breath. Finally, we're getting some of the movement of the breath a little bit lower. Each lesson is a different kind of chapter. In some ways, we work through things a little different. This chapter is respiratory, leg circulation back towards the heart and the brain. Okay. And when we start to shift the side, see what it feels like to push into the foot, micro bend the right knee a little bit more, so a little more than you have. Flex and try to stretch the calf first for a few. So when you slide the belt off the back of your head, pull with both hands and flex the foot. Again, you don't have to straighten the leg further. You can keep a little micro bend and get this nice reach through the calf. I like to make little circles, hold onto the belt real firm, go both directions. Sensation into the lower leg, although I feel the whole leg. Okay, now it's just straight up, but it's not going to help my calf to go over my head. So pull firm, use the biceps. Not so much the joints, right? Activate your muscles, not so much the wrists, but it's nice to have a wrist to do this. Flex a little more, try to really get the toes towards your head. Legs straightish. And now when I take the belt together with my right hand, I'm going to slide the sand up to my belly and across. And then when you do get ready to switch sides, really find a moment. It may not be that meticulous, but you can feel the right back leg lifting. Okay, the front of the left hip elongating. Okay, now we're gonna switch the whole experience with the leg. So maybe close your eyes and then bring the left foot up so you can feel the switch. Okay, and then bend the right knee, take it slow. Feel, maybe you move your knee out to the side and in, kind of zigzag it down. You can play with it. Last time we really started with the bottom of the foot on the ground initially. It could be just moments, but you want to initiate that circulation through the pelvis. And then as you extend the right leg, take the belt into your left hand and then slide the sand down on the front of the right thigh. And front is probably a good thing to remember. It's the front space that we're emphasizing with the sand weight. So yeah, I imagine your second side has some some variation of awareness that's similar, but there might be a little quirk. It might be this is the knee that you have some issues, some inflammation. So just be cautious, right? Feel that the rib body is likely a little more balanced than some of these other areas with the joints. So come back to that. Kind of wake up the centerpiece, take your belt. If it's the same length you're going to start with, you might want to begin on the second side with the exact same length you had on the first and just see how your leg responds. Or maybe when you scoop up the back of your head, you find, this works okay. Or maybe you decide you want to go further, but try to keep it balanced. Let's think of that in restoring, that we want to give the same support to the second side. And if it's a little bit more challenging, of course, you can give more space with the belt. And if it's not, see if you can orient your leg just with this length of the belt, nothing different. Micro bend the left knee. Okay. There's a reach with the right thigh, especially if the leg is extending, straightening out. And you can feel if the sand is really high on the hip, that feels better. You can always push it down or pull it back up. Yeah, for me, this is a really important one to work on in my hip flexor, stretching the psoas. But truly, there needs to be caution with the top leg, then the back of the knee. Arms are open, out to the sides, reaching. And they can just find a comfortable position. You assume they're at on the same level, but I know you kind of don't know, is one arm a little higher than the other. So what might help you is to select a feeling of moving your shoulders back. Of course, that means down, but your movement is back in the shoulders. Just letting the pose do its work, right? We want the pathway of circulation from the shape to do its nourishing work, replenishing back towards the abdominal organs, that pressure back into the kidney. It's an interesting one. And feeling the breath movement in that lower abdominal, maybe kind of the belly brain. You might think of that sometimes, like, the brain up here, it's like the stretching in that area is really so different than belly brain, so different. That this is so connected, right? Interconnected with movement, with nourishment, but you want to settle the back of the pelvis. Use the leg like, I guess you could say you're using it. You're using the extremity to bring the blood back towards the heart. You're just keeping the leg up because that's what happens, right? The heart, when it's down, it's got to pump. But right now you've got that venous return back towards the heart. I mean, you use extremities to get around, right? You use them to walk. you use the feet to drive. So using it to drive back some balance into the heart. Now, as you bend the left knee, we'll take the hands to the belt and just carefully slide it back and let your head lower on your blanket. And as you get a hold of the belt with both hands, reach up till it's a natural reach, don't overdo it. Just feel if the belt can be in the center of the left foot, and you're pulling. If there's a pulling pattern, so that reaches through the heel, right straight up. Yeah, so there clearly if my arms are pulling from the ground, so it's going to be kind of yanking the leg clearly back towards the floor. But do you want to feel like, okay, there's resistance? You know, kind of purely my belt's under the ball of my left foot, so I can definitely feel that resistance at the lower left leg, even though it's upside down. It's pretty rare that when you're sitting upright trying to stretch your calf, or even if you're standing in a forward fold to stretch it, it's a little different than this. This is a good one for the knee, because when we stretch the calf with our foot on the ground, it's kind of it anticipates a little bit of tension around the side and the inner ligament of the knee. So this is good, upside down. Even though I'm not working on the knee focus, but the calf. Okay, so let's move our way up the back of the leg, and we're going to balance our way in towards our hip. So I want you to bend through that left knee and just slide the belt off of your foot. And you're going to move your sand off and I want you to keep it bring both knees in towards the chest. Keep the sand in an easy reach for your hands. In fact, I would put it kind of to the side of your upper rib cage, okay? And then have a block on each side of the bolster. It's on the short end of the bolster, of course. And the block could be at the second or the lowest setting. If you kind of anticipate that your hips are pretty mobile right now, you might have the block low. It doesn't hurt to have it higher and then drop it. So add a ball to the center of the inside of the knees, right? That center piece. And as I squeeze into the ball, or if you don't have a ball, you can use a block. It's hard to squeeze a block and have response, right? A responsive surface that you can squish. But when you squish it, like squishing in and back, releasing. Feel when you move inwards with that pressure. Now we're going to just mobilize the legs. And so it just happens naturally. You don't have to add a squish. So you're going to let the knees go side to side. And when you motion, if the block feels it's just going to be your bumper block, you can move it down. But feel that you kind of swing out of the pelvis. I mean, even if you're one to dance and move, this is an interesting way to move the pelvis. It really does swing it. Okay, so let the pelvis swing a bit and feel the knee position holding the ball or the block, and let the waist stretch open. So you can't quite see how my rib frame is, but what I feel, and I hope you feel, is that your ribs, you're kind of trying to free the cage a bit. A little bit of cage-free ribs going on. So when I move my knees over to the side, I'm trying to stretch out the opposite arm. Each time I let the arm stay spatially out. Okay, now as you move, the knees might be farther down for some of us. They might be farther up towards the arm. Yeah, if the block's too high, it's kind of a bummer, isn't it? It holds you back. Okay, now we do have something we're going towards. So we're going to go into what's called ERT, elevated reclining twist. So I want you to go towards your right side whenever you're ready and take the ball. Actually, I'm going to leave my ball between because I kind of like this for my knees. You can take the ball out or leave it between the knees. But I want you to get your sand and add it, slug up your sandbag to the side of the left upper right at the top of the outer thigh, right? The greater trochanter. So what I'm working towards is right the top bone on the outside of the left thigh. I've got my sand there. Okay, now of course the sand is farther than that area, it slides down. But what you might do is put the ball, if you have that, a little higher up on the inner thigh, up to you, and stretch the left arm open. Okay, but feel how the thighs kind of, the top thigh presses into the lower thigh, and there's a sense of stretch through the side band of the left leg. Okay, right? You can have your feet close together if you're not really liking this ball between the knees. You can always take it away and then put it back if you feel like, well, that was actually good. So I'm going to grab a hold of it and just kind of maneuver it so it supports my knee a lot. So I don't have to spend the energy on so much gripping. The feet can scoot a little bit farther back towards your rear. You know, they kind of dangle in the position. And the left arm is one of the most important parts, the openness of that left side of the chest. So feel that span of the ribs, right hand anywhere. And let your eyes close for several moments here. Sensation through that left hip. Breathing. And if it feels like there's just not a complete stretch for you on the hip, just remove the ball. That'll probably make the impact a little bit more thorough through the side of that left, the lateral rotators in the left leg. So the ball is good. I sometimes like, okay, I'll begin with it and see how it goes when I take it away. Of course, remember your block is under your knees on the side of the bolster. And it could be low and it could be at the next setting. You might try it out, maybe switch it up and just see. Remember, it's restorative, not what hurts more, but what feels like, okay, I can feel the circulation. Now I want to make peace with that with breathing slow and deep. And feeling the ribs expanding. Remember, on exhale, the heart slows down. You know, not really knowing where the tail bone reaches here. This is a tricky one because it's pulling the ribs, the hip, and the tail area might be kind of, you can't distinguish its movement here, but you'll be back on it, right? So if I move the sand, if you've got the ball between the knees, you could just leave it or add it again, you're up to you. And bring the knees back in. So you're back on the tailbone, right? So the tailbone is gently pressing onto the bolster. Definitely still want to be on the bolster well. And when the knees swerve to the other side, let it be a lot of self-inquiry here. So if I've got my block, yeah, I'm using the ball because it's like extra care. I feel like extra self-care. Remember, the sand could be pretty high up on the hip. You decide. And if the ball seems like, oh, that other side, it was really good, but I don't know if it feels meaningful on this side, you can change it up. What's meaningful, right? It feels like there's some sensation that's pooling in an area where there's, you know, a good amount of holding patterns, you know, knots. Feels grippy. Or maybe your lower back has a little bit of achiness. This is a good one for that. So should my block be higher than my bolster? No. I want it to be at the level of the short end of the bolster or a little lower. So if I push it a little downwards, farther down towards my feet, the block, I like that because it stretches right in my waist and then in my low back waist area. And again, the tailbone might feel like, no, can't really negotiate anything there. I can't move my tail under or arch. That's good. I want you to isolate into the hip. Okay, now as the right arm is open, you can let your eyes rest. You can turn your head to the right. You can get rid of your blanket if it feels like it's too much packing under your neck. Completely up to you. You can always pose pass. You know, fine tune that movement of the breath in this right side. So if it's felt to the left, right where you clearly have, you know, the diaphragmatic motion, see if you can span across the intercostal. So ribs, the muscles between the ribs are alive. They're definitely enlivening. So when you're inhaling, you can just visualize that there's movement outwards and they're centering back in. And try to get a little bit of a kind of imprint of focus on how this is in your hip. This is really important where we're going. So we're going to be working in a little bit of easy peasy lunge work, lunging, right? So this is clearly indicates movement, right? From my hip to my knee. When we put our weight in our foot, it's going to be different than if we're just lying on our back. So we want to promote that circulation into the hip and kind of enjoy that. This is going to be enjoyable comparative to where we're going, huh? It's all good, right? It's good to have weight bearing on our legs, right? For our hip. So we're going to go to all of it. But feel where the chest has its openness. Okay, now, if you've got the ball between the knees, take it out. If you don't, you can just put it over to the side yard. And then we're going to slide the sand completely off. It's going to be close by. You can get it if you need it. I think it's probably helpful to get some symmetry before we roll off of this bolster. So if it's a little bit challenging, you don't want it to be such a shock to your system to get off of the bolster. So go back side to side with the knees, minus the ball. And if you need the ball between because it's helpful, then use it. But feel the knees swish side to side and keep it close to the chest here. You want to keep the knees close to the vest. So we want to keep the back in a happy place of stretch. Okay, it's really flexing, isn't it? So now we're going to come around to just roll to the side. Maybe that you don't always roll to. Maybe that's a smart way to go. Just kind of go, okay, I never go to the right. I usually go left a lot. So I'm going to roll to the side, push my feet down. Remember, you've got a blanket down there maybe. So when you come up and around, I want you to come to a crawl position and you're going to unroll a blanket, anyone will do. And I would make it into a quarter fold and then place your knees on it and get close enough to the wall that your feet can touch it. Not too far away, right? You want to have more touch to the wall than you're used to. I don't know what used to means, but there we go. Things come out. So turn the bolster. And if you've got the blanket on the other side, I don't think it's going to bug you, but you might nudge it a little bit away so you got some space to reach. Take a block. They're going to be on each side of your mat. I'm going to have mine over here so you can see. And when you go forward, I want you to have the palm stretching out through the heel of the hand. Turn the hand out a little bit so the thumbs are going towards the back of your mat, or maybe it's the top of your mat. And then come down into stretching the front of the thighs and the arch of the spine. Okay, lift a little bit through the heart. Keep lengthening through the abdominals, through the heart, and lower down. Push your feet into the wall and lower down. So now your elbows come down to Sphinx pose. The hands straight towards the blanket on the other side. but feel if you can kind of broaden across the back and let the weight of your brain tilt down. I know you don't think of this as a lever, right? At the top of the spine, right? The movement of the head, right? The limbic brain, right? That's a limb here. So elbows are pressing and the back broadens for a moment. Okay, let your head tilt down. And I want you to push your feet into the wall so that your knees come up off of the blanket and your upper leg activates, right? It kind of grips on its own just by legs pushing. It all works out. So my head tilts down and I'm going to reach my arms back besides my legs, my hands besides my legs, so I can easily touch to my legs. I want them that close. Roll the shoulders back, 2 shoulders, feet pushing, right? Locust pose, lots of strength in our back. Breathe. And now use this as abdominal support. So you're going to lower down, bring your hands to make a little hand pile. You can also have a blanket under your forehead. But give it a moment where your forehead touches to your hands or the blanket. I'm going to use the blanket. I'm going to fold it a little bit so my forehead touches. And I'm going to find a moment, whether my hands are together or not, that my back is at ease. Okay, so the buttocks relax. I'm not gripping the glutes anymore. They just kind of rest open. And my torso rests on the bolster. Okay, take a few breaths. Slide the hands back so your forehead is probably looking around, I guess, or your eyes, but try to keep your forehead back down. Now, if I lift my head, because that's just the habit we're going to have, you can almost feel like the connection to the tail, and it almost kind of wakes up the base of the spine into the lower back, doesn't it? So what I want you to work on now is when you bring your elbows close to your sides, you're going to really reach your chin forward and then come up so the front body has that work as much as the back lower body. Okay, and come back to hands and knees and into cat pose, chin to chest. Try to scoop the tailbone underneath. And then inhale, arch the spine. Your hands could be forward, they could be out to the sides. You decide, right? You decide how far forward are my hands, or how far out or in. And you want to use them to help you orchestrate this movement as you hollow through the belly. This is a good one to just let all the air out. And then inhale, arch the spine. Exhale, hollow, Halloween. Inhale, arching. So try to track the arch through the ribs, through the clavicle. It's kind of challenging. Okay, now the next time, just come back to a lift of the knees. So you're going to lift them up. You can be in puppy pose, so you don't have to fully commit, right? Your hands have a lot more pressure though. You're going to reach your heels up at the base of the wall so the back of the legs straighten out towards downward dog. And wow, the volume really changes towards your brain, right? You can tell why this would be, we don't want to invert, right? If we've got something going on, right? Like eye surgery or recovery, something, you really feel the blood flow up here. Ooh, really goes fast. So take a moment when you have that reach of the seat. Okay, and then walk the feet closer towards each other, inwards. The heels are a little bit up. And we're going to give this a try. You've got a bolster, so you got something to protect you if you drop into it, right? But you're going to use that lift of the hips. And I want you to bend both knees and take a step with the right foot to the right side of the bolster. Okay? Pivot your bolster horizontal underneath you and take your blocks under your hands. I like to bring them high up. Scoot the right foot back into center so it's
center of your blocks. It's forward of the right hip, so it might not be in the middle of your mat exactly, but it's forward of the hip. And try to keep that lift of the hip on. So the right hip is not sinking. The back heel is a little bit up at the wall. Okay, feel the fullness of the lunge. Now, take a moment when the right hand reaches to the sacrum, okay? I know this might not be a muscle memory you have from 5 minutes ago with the knees to the side with the sandbag on your side, but it's pretty close. So I want you to turn the ribs to the right, lift up through the heart. Be careful, right? Because the blocks can get a little bit wobbly here. So only commit to what you feel like I can try it. If you need to get up, take a break, this is a perfect time, huh? So the right knee bends. Now, if you can feel that lunge to that right thigh, I want you to try to extend the right leg a little bit, lengthen. See if you can stretch out the right leg. You can definitely feel that. Breathe. And then bend through the right leg. Really hinge here and lower the right hand down. Okay, now let's take a full hamstring focus. So the hands on the blocks, you're going to reach back through the lengthening the right thigh, and then start to move the left heel towards the base of the wall. I still want to have it at the wall a little bit, but I'm trying to reach my left heel down and elongate through the back of the left leg. You can feel the difference in the calf stretch like this compared to the leg in the air. Okay, but we'll be here now. Okay, so the right foot is parallel. If it's getting a little bit slippery, you can always walk the foot in a little closer to your bolster. Okay, now feel if the right hip is kind of jutting out. Clearly it's the right foot in front. That hip's going to try to move outwards. So when you reach forward with your torso, breathe. Okay, feel that length in both legs. All right, now as you bend the right knee, I want you to take the left foot to step forward, but just take a mini moment with this bend of the knees. We're not going to do a full Uttanasana. We're going to do a wide stance. So since you're forward and you have a little bit of perch on both feet, you're going to bring the right foot back, and we're going to turn to the right, take our blocks over to the right side, and we're going to have a wide stance. So I'm going to turn the left foot in, the right foot, and I'm going to step the right foot farther back to touch the wall. Maybe scoot your bolster in so it's not in the way. But let's have a wide stance so that when I reach the hips back, do a little micro bend of my knees, and then take the blocks far forward here, far forward reaching, and then let the arms stretch and the hips stretch back. Now this one's kind of interesting because if you have all these props, you might be scatterbrained by seeing all these things, but focus on feeling. The hips are moving back. If you can't tell if your legs are in the same zone, you can always walk back with your hand on the bolster, come up to stand, and just kind of feel the standing pressure in your feet. Okay? You know, this inner thigh world is challenging here. It's going to buckle in. So when I move back, I want my hips to stretch back. This is a hip opener. And as you stretch your hips back, that's where the magic happens. So the hands could be lower. They could be without blocks or with them. You certainly could hold your legs, right? What might even be better for some of us is to stack our bolster on our blanket, right? And come into it restoratively, like the forehead down on the bolster, and here we are. This is great. This is a good one. So give a few more moments, whether you have your head just dangling or it's on something. Right? You might have to stack a lot of props to get your head to touch down, so it's not required by any means. No one has to do that. Okay. But feel the reach, breathe. Okay, now move a little weight towards the center of the foot. Take the blocks a little bit higher, right? If they're flat, that is. Okay. If they're already as high as they can go, you don't have to go get another set. Turn the left foot forward, and let's take that hamstring reach of the back leg. We're going to go a little backwards on this side. So lower the back heel towards the base. If it's like far cry from the heel down, don't worry, you got a wall.
You have the perfect thing to support your calf stretch. Okay. Now, if you're lowering down quite a bit, you might put your blocks a little bit higher. Okay, so we're really reaching through the back muscles of the leg. Steer the right hip center. So if your right hip's kind of moving outwards, turning, rotating, it's that back foot that should help you engage. Right? The feet are in two different tracks, right? You don't want them in the same track here. And give that calf a few more moments to kind of soak up the sensation. Okay, now with the bulk of weight in our feet, okay, bend the left knee, kind of feel the back heel lift up. Left knee bends, back heel lifts, and I'm going to scoot the back heel so it is touching into the wall. I have a pretty steady lunge here. It's not that difficult. I've got a wall to help me. So it does help kind of restore into the hip. And then bring that left hand back to the sacrum. Right, it's going into the hip. And then you can start to turn the chest towards the left side. Remember, stabilize the focus on your block here. Be sure you're stable and feel the turn through the waist. Okay, now you might straighten the left leg. You might find that's a ridiculous idea. This is already enough. What's the point of it, right? Well, it's clearly going to bring you a little bit more weight bearing, but if it's too much shaking, then it's not worth it. So feel if you can get your left shoulder to move a little bit back so the right side of the torso stretches. We'll get this right side stretching in a moment more. And then as you exhale, you're going to come down with your hands on the blocks, or maybe you don't use them. You're going to lower the back knee to the blanket and take a moment, just pause here. You've got a bolster. If it's somewhere else right now, get it underneath your thigh. And I want you to bring the blocks far enough forward that you can walk your left foot toe heel to the right side of your mat and come into pigeon pose with the left knee out and the left foot towards the bolster on the floor, right? The foot doesn't come up on the bolster. Okay. This is more of a higher pigeon, right? With the hands pushing and arching the spine. But for our purposes, right, we're going to lower down for restoring. So we're going to lean down into that circulation of the left thigh. Push back into the wall with the right foot. Yeah, you can lower your elbows onto the blanket or the floor. Yeah, I like to kind of feel where the specific circulation here is. The blocks are pretty firm, so I like that because the energy in the hip is kind of firming. It's affirming. It's a hip affirming. So coming into the hip affirmative here. Let the spine find its gentle arch through the low to the mid to the upper back. And some of us will want to move our blocks or our arms to the right side. Some will stay center. Okay, so if you want a little bit more circulation, you can just turn your blocks to the right. That's kind of the easiest way to do that. The left foot might push a little tighter into the bolster that way. And keep in mind, you want to keep the balance of the ankle joint. So I try to maintain that bit of flexing of my left foot. It's not easy. Okay, so extend out of that spine or visualize that's extending. It's alive. Okay, so coming into kind of spine, the livelihood of a spine. Okay, so when I lean into my pelvis, because that's kind of the root, right? It's kind of your root of where it comes up from. I want you to just kind of feel that we're going to go into a seated spinal twist. So kind of have an awareness of where that might go. So lean into your left thigh. And you might move your blocks back in center, but it's not required. What you want to do is feel kind of that basin of the hip, and then take the right leg. We're going to cross it up and over the left thigh and add our sandbag to the left thigh. And if you're not interested in that sandbag for the left thigh, don't worry. You don't have to use the sand, but it's a nice, I think most all levels of people practicing do find the sandbag. Yeah, the responses I get is, oh, that's good. It grounds the bones. I feel support. Okay, got it. Whether it's advanced or not, I'm not really feeling like it is either. It's just simply grounding. It's just like having a bolster. So turn to the right. Now, if you're lucky, you can reach the wall. That's kind of bonus, but if you don't have a really long reach with your arm, it's not going to work. So if you want to scoot things back so you can touch the wall, it's likely worth it. But the block is okay behind me. So I'm going to hook the left arm to that right leg. And I want to get a feeling that from my armpit to my elbow, I'm trying to reach, but also find the muscular resistance with my femur, right? This is heavy resistance. So is my arm, right? So these are both feeling resistance, right? Humerus, femur, there's resistance in the bone. Okay, so find that this pose is a lot. There's a lot going on. There's bones resisting to help make the spine in its natural rotation, imbibition, circulation, good stuff. Okay, spines, feel the circulation from the twist, but the body kind of feels the goodness usually when you get out of it. So give yourself the moments just to kind of feel that rebound internally. Okay, now as you come out, take a counter pose, counter twist, right onto the inside of the right knee. Be sure the knee pushes a little into it, and left hand back to the block or maybe the wall. Okay, turn, let the ribs rotate, lift up at the heart. You have the left inner leg is kind of trying to push up. Pretty normal, okay? So I try to get the lower back to feel that strong arch, the ribs to lift, breathe. So if I twist too much, I turn too far, my inner thigh kind of clenches. So I'm trying to go just up and turn. Just that much. That's all I can do, and keep the bottom leg down. Come back into center. The left thigh has had enough circulation now. So we're going to come out. I would just take a moment in cobbler's pose. So let the soles of the feet touch together. You can bring the sand onto the feet if you like. Take a moment. Okay. And then switch the pigeon pose. So right knee goes forward and out. Left leg stretches back. Watch out for the block. And as the left leg reaches back and we feel that circulation into the right hip, balance the movement of the spine and lower down, right? You might decide, oh, some of you like the sandbag on your sacrum on this one. That could be a little challenging, but maybe someone will put it on there for you. But elbows can be higher, they can be lower. I would just go with the moment. So if it feels like this is the right lift for my arms. The last side it was different, just see where you are now. And if you've got this side is different in the knee joint, you know it is, but it feels okay in the knee, but you know this is a little bit of a tricky knee. Focus on all times, right? How can I balance the circulation in my back and my pelvis into my hip? Push into the wall. This is great. I like this resistance. Now feeling the weight balance into the thigh, outer right thigh. Remember, this is kind of pulsing to the side of the leg, to the hip. So now when we some of you might want to move your blocks to the left for a few moments before we come out, but just notice the pressure back into the right seat. Kind of steering yourself here into where we're going. You know, even though the leg is just behind you, it doesn't have a new purpose, right? It's just there to help support your pelvis. So when you do come around, I would encourage you to kind of feel this movement. So I kind of like to walk over to the right leg and swing the left leg around the front. Take the left foot to the side of the right knee so it's on the floor, bottom of the foot. And if this is all stuff you're programmed in, it's kind of nice to just remind yourself, get sand on the right thigh. Maybe you put it a little bit higher, maybe a little bit lower on the right inner leg. If it doesn't bother your knee, you might try different styles of pressure. And then when you turn to the left, right, you'll use maybe your blanket and a block to the back of you, but connect. And if it's a little wonky on one side, no worries, right? It's you trying to find coordination with your body parts. I mean, that's this whole practice. So it's pretty humorous. But when I push in with my right arm to my left leg, there's so much deep pull around the kidneys and the liver. No wonder it helps that stimulates the function, right? So I think yoga is medicine, right? When people use medicine, it stimulates function of things, organs, whatever. So this requires a little bit of intensity at times. So if it hurts, don't do it. If you go, oh, I can feel that pressure, lower abdominals, waist gets a pretty deep pressure point here. Feel when you're twisting. Remember, your arm doesn't have to be jacked up on something. You can have it down. You could even reach it around to the sandbag handle. I love that version. So feel that motion in the waist, turning, breathing. You now come out of this turn to the left and just turn to the right. So you're going to bring your right hand back and to the block, or maybe a little lower. Yeah, sometimes it feels good not to have something pulling you up, but turn through the ribs to the right, lift up at the heart. You know, as you unwind, we're going to take one more seated pose before we come up upside down. I want you to chip so that the right leg, I'll mirror you, you're going to stretch out your right leg straight out to the side. And I wouldn't use too much of anything under your left leg. You might use a ball or a block, but I want you to lean to your right leg with a block behind you. Nothing stacked on the legs, but lift up through that left arm and stretch over to your right side. So just let that side beam of the waist, right? This is a little bit more of an active side pose versus side sage, but we can accomplish it in our timing here. So use gravity to get that stretch through that, right? That right elbow leans down to the block besides your leg. Turn your head down towards that right leg. Feel that little bit of twist in the neck. And see if you can come up out of this one with that left hand just reaching back to the side of your left hip. And then as you come up, you're going to switch sides. So stretch out through maybe both legs for a moment, but then you're going to slide in through that right leg, bring it over towards the left, And just take that block out besides. If you need something under your right leg, lean into it and stretch over towards that left side and extend up and over. So just switching sides, keep it simple. Now you feel like you're fully extending out. Okay, I know we might be used to this with sand on our thigh, but just keep it kind of pure and simple. Use the layer of attention into the hip joint. Take a few breaths here. You can turn your head down towards that left leg, rotate gently through the neck, but still feeling your right arm reaching over the side of your head. Bring that upper right arm so it's going to reach and down to your back and come up, and let's bring our knees back in, and we're going to come off of the bolster and push the bolster right up next to the wall. So I want you to bring your bolster up to the wall and take a blanket, and if you have an eye pillow, get that. And I want you to situate your weight so that a blanket is under your head after you roll upside down. So get your seat at the wall and then swing the legs up. That's usually the cue, swing the legs. But I find they just barely launch up to the wall, and then I slide the blanket under my head. Get a sandbag, place that. First things first, I want to find the legs are vertical, and if I need to push myself closer to the wall, I do so, but sometimes I just lift up my hips and curl the tailbone under, and I get just the right amount of reach to the other side of the bolster. And then as I bend the knees, I see if I can fold the sandbag over to my feet, and as the legs lift up, taking that other blanket that you might have across the belly, and then if you have an eye pillow, across the eyes. It's nice to have something that gives you that curtain of darkness, right? Something that goes over. It could be your blanket, right? If you don't have an eye pillow with you right now, just put your blanket over your eyes. That's actually really nice. It's kind of nice for the brain to have that little bit of pressure. So take a few of these inner balance, that sliding feeling of breathing in through the nose and relaxing out through the mouth. If your essential breathing pattern has now been through the nose purely, especially at this point in the practice, you can return to that. It might be quite useful for integration in the respiratory muscles, right? So feeling that breathing through the nose. If you have a little bit of weight on your face and weight on the feet, it's quite interesting, the sensation balance, right? You might feel like there's less weight on the feet, just that orientation shifts. So I would recommend it. I mean, if you can take the moment to use that eye pillow, it'd be likely pretty helpful. Less screen time. And recalibrate. Chest is open. Receive your breath. And relaxing on your out breath. Now feeling that steering of the diaphragm down so that the belly has that fluidic motion. So feel that fluidic motion in the belly. So a soft belly is a strong belly as it draws back towards the spine. If you want to stay in this moment with the sand and the eye pillow, you don't have to get up. You can just stay with it. But if you can feel the need to shift, this is a good time. Again, this is a pose you might want to be in for 5 to 20 minutes. A few times a week would be good for the heart health, immune system, all those things, lots of reasons. But when I shift the sand or the feet from the wall and I bend the knees, I want you to notice how the back of the pelvis has also an outward reach and in lengthening right up the spine when you bend the knees. It's both out and up. So when you take the sand or you drop it overhead, feel the back of the knees, maybe scoop them up with your hands so the palms kind of push into the back of the knees. That might feel kind of effective. Just get that nice length at the back of the knees. You back knees can be good. This might be the part that's always been good. The other stuff. Roll to the side. Let your hands bring you around and take a seat. Push the bolster so it's right next to the wall, and as you crawl back into that station of the pelvis and the heart, just lift up your hands to balance in front of your heart center. And feel that grounding of the throat, the chin just gently towards the chest. And feeling that rich affirmative breath. Deep inhale, feel that belonging into yourself.